double handcuffs in the front, affixed to a big chain around my waist, slave shackles on my ankles. Never once did they tell me what it was all about. Face planted back on that car with the knee in the middle of my back. I looked back towards the front door of our home and I learned for the first time what real horror is. Sharon stood there only in a nightshirt, barefoot, on our front porch, with her hands out to her sides, like our Lord and Savior on the cross, holding in each hand a sock. In the wintry wind, she just wanted to put socks on her feet, but those demons were screaming at her, yelling at her, closing in on her. She couldn't understand. This is what we call in the military danger close. Danger close. And then I saw Satan's fireflies, the laser pointers from their rifles on her face and her chest. And I called out, Abba, Father, please don't let them murder my wife. Please don't let them kill my wife. I believe that was the first time in my adult life I ever called out to our Father for help. It wouldn't be the last time. They threw me in a government vehicle. I kept waiting for the report of the rifles to tell me that Sharon's sweet life had been taken away. They wouldn't tell me what happened to her for the longest time. This is the face of leftist terror. This is from actual discovery that we got from the DOJ, one of the people there on our farm that morning. This is your tax dollars at work. Welcome to the new FBI. They dragged me away and took me to what we learned later was the worst jail on the East Coast, certainly the worst in Virginia. Let me introduce you, just really quickly, to the Central Virginia Regional Jail in Orange, Virginia. This is the passageway outside the solitary confinement cell where I was held. Solitary is supposed to be punishment for what I don't know. 53 days I was held in this rotten place. When you're a prisoner of the state, you don't get a phone call. I never got one of those. But what you do get is you get a short-sleeve burlap blended jumpsuit, some Chinese knockoff flip-flop shower shoes, a plastic blanket, and a threadbare towel. You also get an ice-cold wind blowing on you all the time in a 6-foot by 9-foot concrete box with a solid steel door. The icy floor was my bed for the entire time I was in there. My only source of drinking fluids was dirty water from the tap. The parasites and the other beasties that came with that played heck with my digestive system for months and months after I was initially put in there. They didn't treat me well in prison. They did just about everything they could. They had flashing light torture for me, sound torture, banging and clanging all the time, ghostly sounds pumped in through the vent that was also spewing that icy river of death. Reminds me of one of those old 1960s spy movies where they try to break someone's mind. That's exactly what they were trying to do. Then the physical abuse, the kicking, the beating, and worse, much worse. My reality, here it is. Here's one of the actual confinement cells. That was my whole world. They wanted me to confess to something I never could quite figure out what it was. Stubborn me, having done nothing, I wouldn't do that. And then when they didn't get the result they wanted, they turned out the lights. Total darkness. Have you ever been on one of those tourist trips where you go into a cavern or a mine and they say, let me show you what real darkness is. Imagine that continually. There's no way to mark the passage of time in a prison keep like that. No watches, no clocks. You can't even mark it by when they deliver the gruel to you through the slot in the door, especially when they stop feeding you. It was a very, very rough time for me. It was a hell on earth created by wicked and evil men. Meantime, Sharon was going through a hell of her own, trying to just find a lawyer who would even take a J6th case. Most J6ers were relegated to having a public defender, which is almost the same as having no defense at all. She was busy selling off all of our farm equipment, all of our most precious possessions, prized hand-me-downs and relics from generations prior, just to raise money, pennies on the dollar, to pay the six-figure retainer that the lawyer demanded to take this case. He was well out of his depth. Sharon never stopped fighting, never stopped working on the outside. And the Lord brought us a deliverer for the moment, a guy named David W. Fisher of Glen Burnie, Maryland. He told Sharon, he says, I don't need this case, I want this case. And after he talked to me through the bulletproof glass while I sat there, chained up, have to be chained up, solitary confinement, even when you come out to talk to your lawyers. After about a half an hour, he said, Mr. Caldwell, people lie to me for a living. I'm in criminal defense, but you're innocent. I said, yeah, I've been telling everybody. So he took the case. And sure enough, we managed to get me released. But to draconian restrictions, as Sharon just told you about. I was a mess when I got released, and our life was a mess. The media attacks began the moment they assaulted our farm. Good old NPR, they had broadcast about the takedown before it even happened. They were in on it all along. Our credit was ruined so that we couldn't borrow against the farm to pay the bills, to pay the lawyers' fees. Couldn't do it. The DOJ harassed our friends and our family to isolate us. Something specific just for me alone, we found out, is they contacted every active duty command which I had ever served and said, nobody from this command better have contact with this terrorist. That's the word they use, terrorist. Through the 4 years that we fought them, they would cancel my Social Security, cancel my military retirement pay, cancel my military medical care, and by extension Sharon's as well, since she's a dependent. All these actions, quite illegal, of course, but that didn't stop the Biden DOJ, Merrick Garland DOJ from doing all these things. You might ask, so Tom, how on earth did you get in the crosshairs of these people? Good question. The government knows that if it wants to get people all riled up, it needs to have a focus. It needs to have a focus for people's ire. And so they selected two groups. One was called the Oath Keepers, and the other was called the Proud Boys. The latter I know nothing about, the former I know a little bit about. They are actually a group of former military, former law enforcement, who help in their local community in times of tragedies, like floods, tornadoes, and the like. Remember the summer of 2020 and the Antifa attacks, which we're now seeing ramping up again from the street arm of the Democratic Party. That's what Antifa really is. The Oath Keepers had volunteered as bodyguards, as it were, for conservative speakers and ministers because they were under attack when they would come someplace to talk to citizens. That is what they were doing in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. Most people don't know that there were other speakers scheduled that day on the grounds of the Capitol. In fact, permits had been issued for those speakers and temporary stages had been set up. Of course, the news never tells you about that. But that's what the Oath Keepers were doing. I had a chance to meet a member of the Oath Keepers, a veteran of the war in Afghanistan, and following up with what we're taught in Romans 12, practice a little bit of hospitality. I said, if you're ever here in the greater DC area and your car breaks down on the Capitol Beltway or just need a hot meal, give a call. So she put my cell phone number into her cell phone. Now the DOJ knows nothing about the military. They never chose to serve their country. And so they don't know that a lot of times veterans will refer to veterans by the rank that they held on active duty. So Carol might become Captain Carol. Bob might become Petty Officer Bob, and that's the way it's done. So casual was our relationship, this young lady and mine, that when she put my number in, she could remember my first name, but she couldn't remember my last name. No matter. She remembered that I was a lieutenant commander in the Navy, and so the entry was made Commander Tom. When they flashbanged her house, the FBI, you see it coming, scooped up her phone and went through all the entries in her cell phone. Within 2 hours of that attack on her apartment, the lead FBI agent had a judge's signature on a warrant for my arrest as Commander Tom, commander of the Oath Keepers. No investigation. Welcome, this is the new FBI. During this time, you'll recall, a lot of people were getting arrested. It would take almost 1.5 years for them to take me to trial for something that I didn't do. 5 felonies, by the way, of which I was innocent of all of them. And during that time, anybody who dared to go to a jury trial in Washington, D.C., where all of the trials were held for J6th, were found guilty on every count. Wow. The DOJ with those stacked juries was 65-0. Well, what would you expect from a jury pool drawn from a city that had voted 95% for Joe Biden and against conservative values, President Trump, and Christian values, by the way. So that's the way it was, and people were starting to take plea deals. Why not? Better to take 2 or 3 years, some people figured, so that you can see your children grow up, rather than to take 20 years guaranteed or longer, because those were the sentences that were being handed down. So I kind of understand it. Of course, I was dope. I still believed that the system was going to protect me. I mean, I had served it. I believed in it all my life. I'm not going to cop a plea. You nuts? And Sharon was right there with me. She says, no, you're not taking a plea. We're going to fight them, even if we lose everything. That's the kind of woman that the Lord has blessed me with. So it was. He finally did go to trial, and it was a kangaroo court. FBI agents perjured themselves on the witness stand time and time again. The DOJ lawyers created falsified exhibits. They withheld things called Brady evidence. That's the stuff that's supposed to be given to you because it's exculpatory. It helps you defend yourself. They blocked that. The DOJ and the FBI combined in conspiracy to threaten people who wanted to come and testify, even people that I didn't know who would see me that day. They said, you come to testify for Caldwell and you're going to jail. You can understand, I have no animosity towards the people who decided not to do that. I mean, self-preservation is a very, very strong instinct. Evidence proving my innocence was blocked not only by the DOJ, but by the judge. The government's own closed-circuit television showed every movement that Sharon and I made anywhere near the Capitol that day. It was all exculpatory. But the judge ruled that it could not be seen. This is an actual transcript from the trial. I'm in a very unique position because I have all of the evidence, real and imagined, from that trial, not only for me, but for all the Oath Keepers. You see, they were sequestered in the D.C. gulag every night. I was able to go home with Sharon. On the run-up to trial, I was able to dig through all of the information and even provide some to their defense counsel. Well, one thing really stood out, and that is the star witness for the prosecution, a guy named Abdullah Rashid. No Middle Easterner was Rashid. He was a guy that looked a lot like the character in the old HBO special Tales from the Crypt. Like some kind of a guy who would walk across the street and not pass on the sidewalk. Creepy little guy. And his testimony was really weird. He was supposed to be an insider of the Oath Keepers. And yet, at trial, I sat with the guy who was the actual commander of the Oath Keepers. He was on trial with me, a guy named Stuart Rhodes. Nobody there at the trial had ever seen this guy before. Although the government wanted the jury to believe that he was the head of the West Virginia state delegation of the Oath Keepers. He didn't know anything about the Oath Keepers, had never met an Oath Keeper, and even testified to that. But he testified that he had heard the Oath Keepers making remarks suggesting that they were going to do something violent in DC on January 6th. And he felt compelled to come forward and talk to the FBI. Now, no recording of anything like that was ever shown to the jury. It was claimed that he had recorded one of these go-to online meetings. We never saw the evidence of it. If you'll permit me, just a little bit from the transcript. How long would you say the meeting went on, Mr. Rashid? Answer. I need more information to answer that question. I mean, I could answer it if you tell me how long the government says it is. Sir, would you agree that since 2007 you have gone by 6 different names and personas? Is that correct? Answer from Rashid. Probably more like 30 or 40. Question, are you a convicted felon? Yeah. Sir, to be clear, your prior conviction is for aggravated sexual assault of a child. Isn't that correct? Uh-huh. Is that correct, Mr. Rashid? Yes. Question, is one of the things you asked the government for in return for your testimony today a new identity? Is that fair to say? Answer by Rashid. Yes. So, lying FBI agents and a convicted sexual predator were the witnesses against the Oath Keepers and the little old me. All we could do was continue to pray like we had prayed all along. I've heard if your knuckles are bloodier than your knees, you're fighting your own fight. We prayed very, very hard. No one had ever come away unscathed. All we could do was wait for the jury to come in. 10.5 weeks of going through this kind of trial. And then the jury's verdict was finally rendered. I am the first person to ever go to a jury trial with regards to January 6th to ever be found not guilty of anything. The 3 worst ones, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. Seditious conspiracy, which is trying to overthrow the government, and 2 others. But I was apoplectic because the system had failed us. I thought everybody would see that I was innocent, and maybe they did. But legal minds who know a lot more about the stuff than I do said, hey, those juries in D.C., they weren't going to let anybody get off. Yeah. They were going to find everybody guilty of something. Sharon, she got it immediately. She said, if they found you guilty of even one conspiracy, they would have dragged you away. I never would have seen you again. 20 years mandatory. And she says, we'll beat this other stuff on appeal. That's the kind of woman we're talking about. The second from the bottom one is the one I want to draw your attention to. This became the stuff of legend and has set a precedent, a legal precedent. It's called 1512C2. What does that mean? Obstruction of an official proceeding of Congress. This, 1512C2, is the Enron law. Do you remember the Enron scandal? Where that energy company ripped off so many people? Well, Congress created a law and said, hey, you can't shred documents that Congress might want to see if we're looking into something like that. That is about financial crimes and shredding documents. It has nothing to do with peaceful protest, peaceful assembly, or free speech. There is no law against those 3 things. So the government just pulled out a statute, slapped it on everybody, and thought you would never find out. If people had never been found not guilty, maybe you never would have found out. But that was a very tough situation. We knew it was wrong. The last one was tampering with documents. Tampering with documents. Sharon and I have the most exhaustive record of our day of anybody that you're likely to meet. Yes, 200 pictures, a handful of videos, no violence, no destruction of property, nothing. And yet, they wanted to put me in prison for the rest of my life because they said that I took a handful of these photos and removed them, they said destroyed, from one single Facebook text messenger string with someone who wasn't even convicted of anything of January 6th. Not a co-conspirator. But you've already seen all those pictures because Sharon showed them all to you, except the most heinous one of all, and might as well go ahead and show it. There it is. That's the only one we haven't shown you. Sharon and me singing patriotic songs with hundreds of thousands of people. This and the ones you saw before was why they wanted to put me in prison for the rest of my life. And so it became really tough. It took 2 years to get all the way through the assault on the farm, my incarceration and torture, and going to trial. Normally what happens is if you're found guilty of something, you go to what's called sentencing. That's where they stand you up in public and you say all these bad things about you, and then they tell you how long they're going to lock you away for. It normally happens in just a few months. I set the Guinness Book of Records world record for the longest period of time with a J6th from a guilty verdict to actually going to sentencing. It was over 2 years. There was always something else. Sometimes the day before we thought we'd have to go back into that courtroom to find out that they were going to drag me off to Leavenworth or someplace like Florence. And then something would happen. The judge had a conflict. Some lower court changed the paperwork requirements. The dog ate the judge's homework. There was always something. There was always something. And we did not understand during that time. The Lord was moving. He was making it happen. I couldn't see. I couldn't see for the longest time. It took so long that the Supreme Court of the United States, even with Ketanji Jackson Brown, whatever it is, that's a singer, Jackson Brown, it's her name. But anyway, even with her on it, the Supreme Court said, that thing that you convicted Caldwell of is bogus. You got to throw it out. And in so doing, they threw it out for 350 or more other J6ers, some of whom had been sitting in prison all that time because of this.
Of the obstruction.
Only the obstruction. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, no.
Okay. Yeah. So we finally went to sentencing. Nobody covered it except one guy named Joe Hamlin.
Oh.
One guy. He called it a miracle from God, and I won't deny it. That's a picture of me with Squirt the goat, by the way. We don't have any animals anymore. Squirt lives happily in a farm down the road. But we went into that courtroom in January of this year thinking I would go away forever and ever. The judge looked at me that day, after all the nasty things that were said to me by the prosecutors, all of it. I'll never forget what he said. You'll never read it anywhere in the media. He said, Mr. Caldwell, it's been a long 4 years for you and me together. I was surprised. He said, in the end, the government has failed to meet its burden of proof that you're guilty of anything. Go home with Sharon. Good luck. Somebody said, all rise. That was it. 3 months later, President Trump issued a pardon. Yeah. Not a blanket pardon with everybody else's. No. He issued a pardon just for me. If you've never seen one, that's the most beautiful signature I've ever seen. I'm so grateful to the president.
Handwritten.
Right. So, yeah, not an auto pen. Not an auto pen. We are so grateful. And yet, that didn't wipe away the stain. Not only the stain on my reputation, but the legal stain. I am forever a convicted felon. Therefore, I am marked forever with the modern-day equivalent of the Scarlet Letter, January 6th, as is everyone else who was convicted January 6th. When I first got out of prison, we didn't know if the FBI was going to come back and take me away. I mean, they'd already arrested me illegally on false pretenses. They had done all this stuff, and so I began to write down everything that I could. Every person, every name, everything that happened, how I was able to make it through in that prison, dungeon, rat-infested place. I had to recall all those things like the terrible screams I heard all the time. Screams of people who had lost it. screams of people who were in torment, wailing, crying for people whose names I couldn't make out, calling for their mommies even. How can you not be moved by something like that? I was right there with them, a step from the lemmings rush off the cliff. It was a bad, bad time, especially in the dark, sharing all that stuff. And the things that were in that haunted wing of that prison, that's what they told me, the haunted wing. It was the stuff of nightmares, it really was. But I wrote down a lot of stuff, and as time went on, I wrote in a free form of consciousness style. And now that things have happened the way that they have, they found their way into a book. Believing that some people actually do still read books. We did one. I called it The Mouths of the Wicked. You'll recognize that from Psalm 109, the mouths of the wicked and the mouths of the deceitful are opened against me. They speak of me with a lying tongue. It seemed appropriate since there was never any evidence introduced against me at trial or any of my co-defendants. Only stuff spewed from the mouths of people with evil intent. This book's actually going to be available online. The people that have the brick and mortar bookstores, they're a little on the woke side. So they're not going to carry something like this, but it will be available on bookbaby.com starting on the 6th of November. Sharon has brought some cards. We invite you to have some.
So they could go, just pick up one if you're interested in the book. So.
You can scan the QR code. I don't know how they work. Sharon figured it out. She's a genius. She also, because I couldn't touch the computers all those years, she also figured out how to make websites. She's amazing. She's amazing. But at any rate, it'll be out there. You would honor us if you would consider buying one and reading it, find out what Paul Harvey might call the rest of the story. There's so much to tell you, but our time today is short. It's really short. In the end, man's institutions, the legal system and all of it, failed us. As a matter of fact, I've come to believe that in the country that we live in now, justice means just us. All of the DOJ lawyers that participated in my false persecution and the persecution of so many others, well, a couple of them have moved on. The rest have dug in deep at the DOJ. They're there undermining Pam Bondi and the president as they can. They haven't been fired. The FBI agents that assaulted our farm and perjured themselves before the grand jury, and also at trial, they're all still working for the FBI, as are the thousands of other FBI special agents and SWAT members who volunteered to go across the country to attack the homes of innocent citizens just like you. Republicans, especially the rhinos in Capitol Hill, they just want J6 to go away. They just want it to go away. The bottom line is no one should ever have to fear their government. This couldn't happen to any of you. Sharon and I are just ordinary folks caught in extraordinary circumstances. It's unfortunate that most of America believes that with the pardons and commutations of these sentences, that J6 is over and everybody is okay. But that's not the way it is. Sharon and I are on the mend, partially because of some of the angels who were in this room, who held us up on those darkest of days, who reached out their hearts through cards and letters and phone calls. You're here. You're here. And each one of you deserves to be recognized individually. We are so grateful. We are so grateful. You are a part of this victory. And those of you who are with us now, who didn't know a lot of this, who are willing to listen and willing to consider that things that you've been told about J6 might not be true, seeing what we've gone through and where we are now, it's your victory too. But we've met many others who've lost it all. Their spouses didn't stay with them. They dumped them. Their families torn asunder. They've lost their businesses that they built. They've lost their careers. Some can't even get jobs because the hiring authority is low in the business and even in the trades. We've met J6ers who are homeless. All have been shattered. All have been hurt. All in their own way and yet all similarly. And it's a terrible shame. It's important we think, Sharon and I, to speak the truth. Yes, we could have gone away. I said something the other day at a gathering of some of the sweet people that we met for the first time yesterday. Yeah, we dodged the bullet, but shouldn't we shine the light on a gunman? And so that's what we tried to do. That's what we've tried to do. We've been so blessed. I have seen so much stuff in my life, so much stuff. I mean, especially when I was serving you, I have sailed into the raging storm at sea, and I have stood so far away from where society is, so far away from electric lights, that you can actually read a newspaper by the light of the stars. I've seen the birth of a baby in a mud hut in the Philippines, and I've seen the death of our innocents in a courtroom in D.C. But through it all, we've had a lot of blessings, not the least of which being the blessing of being here with you and being able to talk to you. Noah got a rainbow as a sign of the covenant between God and his people. This is a picture of our farm in the fall, before our rendezvous with Destiny in January of this year. Noah got a rainbow, we got two. We should have known everything was going to be okay. Sharon and I are so honored that you have shared some of your time with us today. May God bless you all. May He continue to bless the United States of America. Thank you. We have chow waiting, but if people want to stay for a couple of questions, we certainly can do that. And we're going to stay